So in my fourth year of university, I took a seminar course in developmental psychology, and the course had a focus on reading and literacy. And initially I thought it was just going to be like, there's a lot to the course, but just going to be like a little bit of, focus on literacy, but then there's more. And then when the course actually started, the course was entirely about literacy and reading, and I was like, go for it. I'm not the one. Because I thought it was going to be the most boring thing ever, and I was going to drop the course, but then I realized I needed that course to graduate, and man's had to graduate. I was also trying to stay in school for another semester, so I did the course, and it ended up being the best thing ever, which I know kind of sounds like a really cliche thing to say, but when I tell you that I learned so much about literacy and just how much goes into it, like it literally shifted my thinking. Like I lost the ability to make fun of people who misspelled things on the internet because I had a clearer picture of literacy. Like how when you're reading something, right, and there's like a typo, and you look at, or maybe just me, and you look at your keyboard, right, to see how far the intended letter was from the letter they actually used. And if it was like close, if it's like beside it, okay, their finger just slipped and they made a mistake while they were typing, which is forgivable. But then if it's far away, then they just couldn't spell and that type of thing. And I just stopped doing that. Like after I understood, all that goes into this sort of thing a little bit more, and yes, the Father is working on my heart. I used to do that before, but things just changed. Literacy is the ability to read and write, and I had never thought about just how much goes into it because it had always come so easily to me. But life does not offer everybody an even playing field when it comes to literacy development. Many things have to come together nicely for a person to develop solid literacy skills, and some people are just given more than other people from the jump. And what I mean is that there are intersecting factors that improve or worsen a person's chances at developing, good reading skills, right? Things like socioeconomic status, for example. The higher your SES, the better your chances of, having access to good education, just better your chances of being able to develop, strong reading and writing skills. Which is why I've never liked it when accounts like Cracks TV, for example, will go to the market maybe, and ask people to spell things, and when the person spells it wrongly, they'll start laughing, they put all these they'll turn them basically into a joke because they can't spell it properly. And that has never sat right with me, because they are obviously going to places where they know they can find people of lower socioeconomic status, who probably are not too literate, who probably know how to spell, just so that, people on the internet can laugh at them and make jokes about it. Like, I've just never liked it. And another factor is biology, right? So there are a lot of learning impairments that can hinder a person's ability to develop strong reading skills, and these impairments usually have a genetic component to them. Now basically there are many, but the one we're going to be talking about today is dyslexia, just because it affects a lot of people, and yeah, I don't know, it's the one that really caught my attention the most, out of all the ones we learned. Now, dyslexia is a reading disorder that involves a person having trouble with phonological processing despite them having normal intelligence. So it does not affect their intelligence at all. And phonological processing basically just means your ability to blend letters and sounds into words. Yeah, that's the easiest way I think to put it without just going off on a tangent. But yeah, basically it does not affect general intelligence. If a person has dyslexia, it obviously doesn't mean they're stupid. None of that. And actually people with dyslexia are known to have had very high IQs. If you just Google it, you'll find a long list of very famous people that have or had dyslexia, like Einstein, Leonardo da Vinci, Picasso, Steve Jobs, JFK. So thankfully we know this now, that having something like dyslexia does not affect your general intelligence, and it doesn't mean you're stupid. But unfortunately that wasn't always the case. There have been a lot of people who have grown up thinking that they're stupid, thinking that they're just slow and something is wrong with them, particularly because everybody around them probably told them that. If you think back to school, primary school or secondary school even, how there was usually that one kid in class who wasn't too good at reading, or just who all the teachers just called them slow. And if everybody had one classmate that all the teachers were always saying that about, then that's a lot of classmates in a lot of schools, right? That's a lot of people. And honestly, I can't imagine what it must have been like, going through school and having everybody from classmates to teachers to friends, just people, telling you how slow you are because you can't read. That come on reading that everybody can do. You can't, I I can only imagine what that sort of thing, could have been like, especially when you're living in a place where people don't really know, what dyslexia is or what other just like reading disorders or learning impairments might be. Again, disorder and impairments are very strong words, to be honest, just the only words I can think of right now. I'm sure there's a better term, but yeah. Anyway, honestly, even just the internet can be so rude. Like, you just try tweeting something, without proofreading it like twice, when, especially if you're being rude or if you're giving somebody unsolicited advice or if you're dragging somebody, like, the way people will come for you, the first thing they will attack is your grammar, and by association, your intelligence. People associate having really good grammar with, being very high in intelligence level, right? Now, if you grow up in a place where everybody knows what dyslexia is, the teachers know how to help you, they know how to teach you in ways that will help you succeed, that's fantastic, right? But not everybody grows up in that sort of environment, so I can imagine it being extremely, extremely difficult for people who grow up in places where absolutely nobody knows what's happening. They just think you're stupid, right? Which is far from the truth. In a lot of ways, I can only really speak to the Nigerian experience because that's what I am, that's where I grew up. And from what I remember, people were not kind to that one kid in class who didn't know how to read, yeah. And this is one of those things where if you've never struggled with it yourself, it might be difficult for you to understand it. And I know this because for a long time it was difficult for me to understand it, right? But I'm thankful that it was explained to me in ways that helped me really have a good picture of it, right? Especially from that course that I took in school. If reading comes easily to you, like, it's just easy to not think about it. When you go to the supermarket, you can read everything easily. If you're at an airport, it's easy to navigate. If you're at a shop, if you're at a bank, that sort of thing. Text messages when you're talking to people, hearing from people. On Instagram, on Twitter, it's, reading and literacy, they're deeply woven into the fabric of our society, which is not a bad thing. But I'm saying for a person who struggles with reading, that can be a constantly frustrating thing. I can't imagine what having that weight on your shoulders, would do to a person's self-esteem, especially in a place like Nigeria, where there's no word for dyslexia in some places, So if people see that they're teaching the whole class and you're just not getting it over and over and over again, they will insult you, or they'll slap you, or they'll use cane and flog you, If they do spelling dictation and you get like 8 out of the 12 words wrong, they can flog you 8 strokes of the cane, like that sort of thing. Yeah, I can see it being incredibly stressful, especially in Nigeria, especially for a small child. Anyway, I'm trying to explain this in the best way that I can, and as simply as I can, to avoid this video being like 1,000 hours long, and as respectfully as I can as well, because I recognize that I'm speaking on this, sort of from the outside. I haven't experienced dyslexia or any other learning impairments really. Acknowledging that I'm standing on the outside of it and cannot fully grasp the depth and breadth and just fullness of the experience with some of these types of things, right? Dean Bragonier actually did a TED Talk about dyslexia, which was so amazing and so insightful. So I highly, highly, highly recommend watching it. I will link it in the description box. That video is from the mouth of somebody who has had dyslexia, and is thriving and is living a great life. And he fully explains just the depth of what the experience is like and how people on the outside can be proper allies, that type of thing. So I highly recommend it. So essentially, to wrap things up, my big thing is educate yourself on it, read up on dyslexia, watch the TED Talk that I'm linking in the description box, right? So that we can be part of the solution instead of being part of the problem. When you hear people making rude remarks about a person who can't read, you can shut it down because you know better now. If you encounter friends or if your children ever have dyslexia, you'll know that there's nothing wrong with them. They just learn differently and they have an enormous world of potential because their brains work in a fascinating and different way. And that's it, honestly, there really shouldn't be any stigma. They call dyslexia the MIT disease because they've had a good number of their students have it, like those kids, they're sabi carry fire for head, man. They just need to be taught in the proper ways that work for them and they're good. But that's all I have for this video. I try to keep it as simple as possible because this is one of those conversations that can get very, very complex. There are many different kinds of dyslexia. It is not a one-size-fits-all type thing. Anyway, essentially, I will link, some resources in the description box so you can read up on it more if you would like to. But yeah, that's all I have for this one. So I will see you in the next video. Videos every week. Make sure you like and subscribe, otherwise I'll break it into your house in the night and I'll steal all your cutlery. Thanks for watching. See you next week.